We're here in Niagara Falls, set up to do a grand adventure.
Oh, big adventure. Well, it's not looking at a bunch of water, which you see over there. There's plenty to do out here, but we only want to do one thing today.
Yes, play arcade games. Lots and lots of arcade games.
Yep, we're going to be taking a look at plenty of arcade games here in the Niagara Falls region because there's lots of arcades still around here.
Yeah, see all that water back there? It powers a lot of hydro dams and things that cause electricity.
In arcade games.
Yeah, that's right. So we're gonna be able to play a whole bunch, and there are more here than I think anyone realizes. But before we even get into that entire adventure, there is one thing we have to do. Set up 2 specific rules. Adam, what's the first rule?
Okay, rule number 1, if we're going to an arcade, there can't be any fee for us to actually enter the premises.
That's right, because then it's not really an arcade, it's a theme park.
That's right. And rule number 2?
We are not going to be looking at any arcade that has less than 10 games, because that's not really an arcade, it's more of a laundromat.
It's a gathering, it's a gaggle of arcades, if you will.
There's a lot of games to look at, there's a whole bunch of things for us to see, so I think it's time we get going, because this is going to take several days to do.
Let's head out.
Let's go.
Look, folks, we got a lot of games to look at, so we have to kinda limit our adventures in Niagara Falls and keep our aim righteous and true.
That means there are a whole bunch of attractions in the city that we will not be visiting, no matter how flashy or interesting they might be.
Bumper combat cars?
Not gonna happen. Kitschy wax museums?
No siree. Creepy haunted houses?
Nope. Ooh, needlessly expensive chocolate shops?
Nuh-uh. Ooh, but how about a dinosaur mini-putt with dinosaurs? Dinosaurs, Adam! Dinosaurs!
Sorry, bud, that's a big old no.
And as soon as we figure out whatever the heck this place is,
That's probably a solid no, too.
we are strictly talking arcades and arcade games today. And in order to better understand the many systems we'll be seeing and playing, we're gonna go ahead and place these devices in 2 categories.
Video arcade games. Machines that typically offer the player's score or goal-based gameplay. You know, like Street Fighter, Pong, Pac-Man, Frogger, Donkey Kong, games you play for the fun of the play.
And redemption arcade games. Systems that utilize skill or luck. These reward the player with glorious redemption tickets, a connected stream of paper that can be exchanged for prizes at a redemption counter later on.
Seriously though, redemption arcade games can be fun, but we lean towards choosing video arcade games way more.
They tend to give us a longer, more entertaining play experience with a nice shot of escapism.
Who knows, maybe we'll find some redemption-style games that make us change our tune.
But in order to find any arcade machines whatsoever, we can't just wander around this region aimlessly. We need a plan.
And a map. We'll plot out different stops on our tour.
Now, Niagara Falls is a Canadian city on the edge of the province of Ontario that features a big, captivating landmark.
That's this spot right here, the Niagara Falls themselves.
That's a big old drip.
It's 2 big old drips, the American Falls and the much larger Horseshoe Falls.
Due to the natural wonderment and splendor of this world-famous attraction of rapidly descending water, this entire zone we're highlighting here is what we call tourist trap territory.
Almost every business in this area is set up so that tourists can see the falls from multiple vantage points.
They're also set up to drain a wallet as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Outside of tourist trap territory, you've got secondary sightseer sector. It's still Niagara Falls tourism spots, but because it's further from the moving water, this area isn't quite as in demand.
We called and visited every hotel in the Niagara Falls area. We needed to know who has games.
There's no map online highlighting every off-the-beaten-path game space. Most of these places are practically invisible. You gotta do the legwork. And oh boy, did we ever.
Unfortunately, many of the locations we found broke rule number 2.
Thou shalt have more than 10 games.
The variety of games at some of these places was surprising, but they still fell short of that 10-game minimum. And for clarification, crane machines and air hockey tables didn't qualify for our tally, which narrowly bumped out the Ramada from our list.
Here's an arcade connected to a hotel water park where we found arcade units riddled with problems.
And this is one of the reasons we won't be considering this arcade either. There are a couple of newer machines set up that seem to be in working order, but this arcade is definitely not one we recommend.
Unless you want to win a Sony Xbox One? Man, business mergers are getting nuts!
Not all arcades are such a sad state of affairs, though.
This place is called Arcade. It's nestled inside the Best Western Plus Cairncroft Hotel.
Even though it has less than 10 systems, we marveled at the fact that each of these machines was very recent and in perfect condition. If you're looking to play any of these games, this arcade may be worth visiting just to play them in a more quiet and comfortable setting.
But enough of the tiny, off-the-beaten-path mini-arcades. Let's head back to the heart of tourist trap territory and get to our first official Niagara arcade.
Adventure City. Located at the foot of Clifton Hill under the tower of the Sheraton Hotel, this arcade is home to a good mix of machines, both new and old.
When we walk in, the place smells like food. And not just any food, rainforest food. Because Adventure City shares a lobby with the entrance of the Rainforest Cafe.
The arcade itself is loud. Real loud. It sounds like all the machines are set to max audio, and then, as if that wasn't enough, they're blaring pop music on top of everything.
So, the place smells like a rainforest and sounds like a zoo. Mixed feelings right about now.
But we're here to play some games. And play games, we will.
If you've been to an arcade recently, you're certainly familiar with these. Pieces of plastic like a gift card that holds all your digital game credits. And tickets if you win any. You load them up and play.
But before the digital swipe card, arcades ran on a different, more analog system. A method that has largely been forgotten to time, but kept alive in Niagara Falls, Ontario.
Coins!
Tokens!
Flat circular metal thingies. And you carry them around in these free little buckets they give you.
However, since our goal is to play as many games as we possibly can in every single arcade in this city, this won't do.
No kidding. Buckets get in the way, and I'm actually very clumsy.
So, we have decided to dig deep into the past and reuse a sophisticated ancient gamer accessory forgotten over the ages. A powerful tool born and utilized in a more civilized age. Fanny packs! Oh, we're so ready.
It's game time.
How about we start out with a light gun game?
Sure, how about we try Operation Ghost?
Let's Ghost! Whenever I come to arcades, I love playing as many of these games as I can. You can't easily replicate this experience at home.
At least, not like this.
A nice big screen, fast frantic gameplay, a big soundscape, and an oversized controller that's bigger than my head.
One of the best parts of this setup is how amazing it is as a co-op game. A few minutes in, and it's so natural to call out enemy positions with your brother-in-arms beside you. You really feel like you work as a team.
I love when the game switches out its perspective and throws you into the position of a sniper or a machine gunner flying in on a helicopter. It's like a little reward section for staying alive that long. Another thing you don't commonly see in many other games is multiple inputs on the controller. Each controller has a trigger to shoot and an action button at the front to activate special sequences. That's pretty normal. But what is really unique is this toggle that switches between different firing modes.
I really like this feature. Most like gun games I've played usually just have one mode of firing. With this switch though, you can spray and pray with an automatic style approach, or focus group shots with burst fire. Or if you're especially daring and focused on very precise shots, single fire mode. Options. We likes the options.
I really didn't think different firing types would change how you played so much, but it does have an impact. More than I expected. With all these bells and whistles, I'm actually surprised it doesn't have vibration feedback in the controller.
Wait, yours doesn't?
No, does yours?
Yeah, I feel every shock and rumble rocking the entire controller. It's really immersive. This pad here at the back knocks the controller right into me.
Well, crap, I guess my controller's busted.
That's a risk with arcade games practically anywhere you go.
Sometimes something might be a little busted, and you might not realize it until you've already paid to play the game.
Your broken controller aside, about the only negative I've got with this game is that this controller weighs a ton. Seriously heavy. I can't imagine a kid picking this up and having a lot of fun with it.
This is man controller, made for big boys, not puny baby man. You have baby arms!
Yeah, well, despite my baby arms, I managed to hold my own on this. One credit each got us pretty far in the game. This game goes by two names, Sega Super GT or Scud Race, depending on your region.
Scud Race doesn't sound like a good name.
No, it doesn't. But boy, oh boy, do I like me a racing game.
This is a time-honored tradition with arcade game makers, trying their best to replicate the feel of driving a car.
Well, this machine looks like it's been driven into the ground. The game is in a rough state.
You're looking at the deluxe model here. This variant is supposed to move and jolt as you play.
But it doesn't. doesn't? I guess after so many years of operating, this mule is done kicking.
Also, we gotta note the monitor's been replaced as well. Originally, it likely had a rear projection screen. Those are hard, if not impossible, to find replacements for nowadays.
The controls feel a little slippery, and the acceleration feels a bit unresponsive. And the buttons to change your perspective?
Well, we assure you, they did exist at some point in the past before devolving into these exposed nubbins.
This game isn't so hot, which is kind of disappointing for our first racing game experience.
Oh, look, a video game based on a movie.
Yes, Terminator Salvation, the one Terminator flick that was set to begin a new trilogy of movies, but fizzled out before they could make the second one.
I love these kind of games. I consider this classic-style arcade shooting. You got your grenade button on the front left of the controller, and a pretty neat way of reloading. You slap the underside of the weapon clip, a simple way to make it feel like you're clipping in more ammo. Overall, it's a solid game. Lots to love if you're a fan of the Terminator franchise. Plenty of familiar death machines from the flicks.
No Arnold, though.
Yeah, no Arnold!
Look over there!
Oh man, is that Cruis'n Exotica?
This is the last entry in the Cruis'n series before the franchise went dormant in arcades for decades.
It started way back in 1994 with Cruis'n USA, followed by Cruis'n World.
Those titles taught me that arcade games could have secrets. I remember seeing someone tap the view buttons while selecting vehicles and revealing hidden selections like a school bus. My mind was completely blown.
That same rush for speed and craziness from the earlier games, it's all here.
This Exotica game had only one home console port. It was on the Nintendo 64. In the very large history of Nintendo properties, I feel like people forget that the Cruis'n name is actually owned by Nintendo.
Exotica feels similar to other Cruis'n games. You've got your choice of cool vehicles and over-the-top tracks. It's a game with tons of visuals that is all about fun.
This game should be long since retired. I can't believe we're seeing stuff like this so early in our journey. Whoa! Look at the size of that screen!
It's gotta be over 8 feet tall! It's massive!
And very, very bright. I don't think I've ever seen a machine like this.
Bust-a-Move Frenzy. Look, I've played Bust-a-Move before, or Puzzle Bobble as it's also known. It's a pretty classic game. Colorful balls attaching to other colorful balls, creating ball explosions or dropped balls.
Can you stop saying balls like that so much?
Well, point is, I've played this before, and I know you have as well. But do you notice anything different here?
Well, there are 2 seats, 2 guns, and wait, guns with a Bust-a-Move title? That's not a thing, is it?
Oh, it's not. This is so different. But wow, this works really well.
Right? The gun allows us to easily aim at the screen, landing precise shots quickly, something that was more guesswork in the original series as you moved on. The puzzle field also becomes more cluttered as you go to ramp up the difficulty.
This controller scheme feels smoother than in the original Bust-a-Move games. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the original joystick controls, it's just pointing with this gun controller feels so intuitive.
And this 2-player experience, it's co-op. Co-op Bust-a-Move.
We're calling out shots to one another just like we did in Operation Ghost. This is a ticket redemption machine, but it plays like a classic video arcade game. It's an amazing marriage of both design types. And by all accounts, if I had just saw this machine, I would have thought it was a gimmick, a lesser arcade experience, but it just clicks. It's insanely fun.
There are definitely experiences successfully bridging classic arcade games with ticket dispensing machines that kind of give you a good mix of both worlds.
Well, we spent a while poking around Adventure City. I think it's about time we shake a leg.
Wait, speaking of shaking a leg, I think there's something we have to do before we take off. Something less Bust-a-Move and more Bust-a-Groove.
Dance Dance Revolution Extreme. Oh boy, I don't think there's anything I'm worse at in this world than dancing.
This style of game is pretty simple. You got a dance floor with cymbals that you step on at just the right moment as the matching cymbals flow up the game screen.
Yeah, that would be simple, but I'm very uncoordinated. I'm not so good with all this physical activity. Makes me nauseous.
Well, I think I'd do a bit better on here, but one of my floor sections seems to be broken, so...
Yeah, and look, a missing button. Ooh, I shouldn't, but I have to. Pokey!
Hopefully we'll find another machine that's in a better working state so we can attempt to play this style of game again.
Or not, you know, I'm not gonna learn to dance anytime between here and the next arcade.
And that was Adventure City underneath the Sheraton Hotel,
Yeah.
which, honestly, it's got a pretty big collection of games.
It does. It is a great collection of games. Unfortunately, Some of them are in disrepair and
Yeah.
played a Dance Dance Revolution cab, and
Yeah.
it was in some disrepair. But what were some of the positives you took?
Okay, well, any of the new games,
Yeah.
they were good. Operation Ghost,
Yes, Operation Ghost is awesome. Bust-a-Move Frenzy?
yeah, Bust-a-Move Frenzy was amazing. But like, a real arcade game is a game that you can play and just have a lot of fun with, and there's no ticket redemption from it.
Right.
And Bust-a-Move Frenzy is a redemption game, but it's so close to not being that.
to be a redemption.
Yeah.
That's what we both kind of walked away with.
But there is one thing that you will note when you go in. There's a Rainforest Cafe. To my knowledge, I think it's the only one in Canada, and it happens to be here.
That may also be a positive or a negative.
Yeah, depending on how you see it.
Another feature worth mentioning about Adventure City, it's located on Clifton Hill.
Clifton Hill is nuts.
It's not a theme park, but it's about as close to being a theme park as we've ever seen without paying admission.
A typical Burger King might look like this.
On Clifton Hill, it looks like this. Since the falls attract so many people from all over, Clifton Hill became a melting pot for the bizarre. Remember all those places we chose not to visit at the start of the video?
Yeah, most of those, they can be found on Clifton Hill.
Everything is strange, everything is expensive, everything is attempting to be wildly entertaining.
It's all designed to grab your attention, every single inch of this entire hill.
From wax museums to animatronics to haunted houses to Susian daymares.
You ever walk through a food court with an explosive fever while listening to a Halloween sound effects compilation? That's the Clifton Hill experience.
The further you get from Clifton Hill, the apex of tourist trap territory, the more your surroundings evolve.
From crazy kitsch to rotting yesteryears.
Like this orb-shaped building.
Once a Planet Hollywood, now a sad globe collecting dust.
Sad's a good word. Lots of sad around here.
Ugh. And now it's off to our next arcade on Clifton Hill, Fun Zone. Well, here we are.
At an Applebee's? Or an IHOP? Or a Benihana?
Okay, yeah, I know it doesn't look like much from the outside, but this is Fun Zone Clifton Hill.
What? Oh, come on. A hidden arcade?
A hidden arcade tucked right in the middle of the hill with practically no signage besides the words Fun Zone on the wrong side of the building.
And look at all these systems, sitting unloved under Japanese dinnertainment, fluffy flapjacks, and whatever Applebee's sells.
Now, the space itself isn't as big as Adventure City, but they've still managed to hold their own with a pretty interesting mix of titles.
This entire arcade has all their games set to silent or low volume attract mode, meaning that if you're one of the few people in here like we are right now, the games we play will not be fighting for audible dominance with neighboring machines.
See anything we should play first?
Oh yeah, first thing that caught my eye, Sega Rally 3. Look at this crazy thing. It's like they chopped off half a car and stuffed it into an arcade system.
Sega often goes the extra mile with bigger cabinets, and it pays off. You want to hop into something like this even if it isn't plugged in.
And that really speaks to the relevance of experiencing games like this in the arcade. Sure, you can play thousands of racing games at home, but most folks aren't doing it in a half-car setup like this. This is gaming in style, my friends.
Or it would be, but unfortunately, age caught up with this thing. You're looking at another deluxe variant of a game that should have motion in its seat, but it's not working.
Again, wouldn't know it unless you sat down and tossed in a token.
But there's more. It seems like the seat position doesn't lock in place either. Not a big problem for Adam, Mr. I'm so tall I can reach the pedals easily. But for me, Mr. Short Ride, I really gotta stretch out in this thing. While playable, it's not exactly ideal. Lucky for us, the controls in these cabs are functioning really well here. Kicking turns and drifting around competitors is a blast.
Many of Sega's racing titles feature vehicles that handle well and are pretty easy to drive. Is it unrealistic? Yes, but it makes games like Sega Rally here far more accessible and lots of fun to jump right into.
And there are other amazing Sega arcade games at this location too.
Like House of the Dead 4. Okay, this is my jam. I love House of the Dead. If Operation Ghost is the modern idea of a light gun game from Sega, House of the Dead's entire series helped cement the formula early on.
Considering Clifton Hill has this spooky dooky aesthetic with monsters and haunted houses all over, House of the Dead feels like it fits right at home here in this location.
The game might sound really scary, but playing it right now, it's got an action movie vibe. Less with the spooks, more with the shoots.
Now with Operation Ghost, when you needed to reload, the game would automatically do it for you when you emptied a clip or if you aimed off screen and fired. Simple old school reload mechanics.
But with House of the Dead 4, you shake shake it.
Shake to reload.
Shake to shake off zombies that are grabbing ya.
Shake, shake, shake.
Shake what Sega gave ya.
The controllers are a lot smaller on this machine than with Operation Ghost. Only a trigger and a special button near the front to throw grenades and stuff. Plus, they are much lighter.
Baby arms!
Yeah. But over time, you might find your arms getting tired from all the shakery.
Surprisingly, both controllers had no vibration or feedback at all. This really sucks because rumble is a large part of the feel of a good light gun game.
Yeah, the setting could be turned off or the guns could be damaged. Either way, a disappointment you only discover after you've paid your tokens.
If what we played of Operation Ghost felt maybe a little too stiff and rigid, House of the Dead flies through scenes way faster, keeping you on your toes the entire time.
But if you're not a fan of zombies and still want to get that light gun fix, I think there's something over here we gotta try. Look, you're seeing this, right? A mid-2000s arcade game revolving entirely around the original 80s Rambo films?
Can I say it? This looks, kinda cheesy.
Yeah, it's sorta wait a minute. The controller here is giving off serious Operation Ghost vibes. Why do they look so similar?
Well, both this and Operation Ghost are Sega games. Maybe they reused some of the same components?
Yeah, they could've, but less talky, more rocky. You're an unstoppable force with the odds stacked against you, taking on an entire army single-handedly.
Or it would be single-handedly if it wasn't for the whole two players thing.
But the best feature in this game, as you mow down enemy forces, you fill your Rambo Rage meter. Then, when you trigger the action button on the controller,
Rambo Rage!
You become momentarily invincible, an untouchable warrior with unlimited ammo sawn through whole platoons like nothing.
House of the Dead had a lot of stuff going on, but this game pushes the tile well past 11.
You've still got that Sega light gun style moving from one location to the other, but the game has given me more than enough time to completely clear a screen before moving on.
You get the big ol' Rambo machine gun to fire like the ultimate 1980s action star. This game completely puts you right into his shoes.
And the in-between special sections? I love these. Take out a helicopter with one single well-placed shot from a bow and arrow? Check.
Camouflaged in mud and dirt to surprise attack an unknowing enemy? Check.
Tons of clips from the movies play all over with kind of strange voiceover dialogue, and the game includes a Rambo rap that, trust us, you need to experience yourself.
The story of me shall be told, cause I am Rambo.
Does it have to make any sense? No. Has this been the surprise hit of the games we've played so far?
Yes.
What do we got over here? A World War II themed air combat game.
Oh, I know this. I've got a copy of Blazing Angels at home for the Xbox 360.
Want to check out how the arcade version compares to your console game?
Sure. Let's throw in 2 tokens and find out if... I put in 2 tokens and it gave me 3 tokens back.
Must have been a mistake. Try it again.
Okay. Yep. It just did it again.
Never heard of an arcade machine that paid you for attempting to play.
Me neither, but okay, looks like I've got it working now. Basically, we got a free game on the house. Woo!
So, what do you think?
Yeah, it's not very good. I was hoping this would be a stronger version of the game and the 360 got a watered-down port, but so far it has the same bad controls. Turning the plane takes forever. I mean, look at this. The moment I physically shift the joystick left or right, it takes several seconds for the plane to commit to the turn.
Were planes of that era turning lightning quick? Probably not, but this isn't supposed to be about realism. It's an arcade game.
Just like what Sega was doing with all their racing games. Unrealistic? Sure, but responsive? You betcha.
That slow turning animation and movement, is it similar to the gameplay in Blazing Angels' home release?
Yeah, it is. Playing it at home gives you the same slow turning. Visually, they are near identical.
Wait, Comic Sans and all?
Comic Sans and all.
All right, we need something after the sluggish mess. Some kind of gameplay palette cleanser.
I think we've got just the thing right over here.
Mario Kart Arcade Grand Prix Deluxe is a great-looking cabinet. It's bright and colorful and feels like a solid entry in Nintendo's beloved kart racing series.
But this wasn't just produced by Nintendo, it was developed in partnership with Namco, and you can tell.
Yep, we've got classic Namco characters added to the roster, like Pac-Man from Pac-Man.
You've also got a bunch of tracks created specifically for this arcade release. You won't find them anywhere else.
From the music to the menus, this game is just poppin' with character. Really, this works surprisingly well as a seated racing experience. The controls are super intuitive. Feels more forgiving and easier to drive than even the Sega racers we played earlier.
There's also a team mode, racing with a partner and combining forces from time to time.
One player drives while the other gets to blast away opponents from a tank turret.
Rambo Rage!
Overall, this game has a bunch of classic Mario Kart systems, drifting, boost pads, even timed rocket starts.
It includes tracks that are a little more streamlined, and it has a ton of items you can use to mess with other racers.
And if you are even remotely interested in this game, you won't find it at home.
Yep, as far as we can tell, each stage is totally unique to this arcade release. Many usable items are only found in this version of the game as well.
If you're a big fan of Mario Kart, you're gonna want to play this.
Looks like we got another Dance Dance Revolution machine.
I mean, we've got to, right?
That was Fun Zone Clifton Hill, and I gotta be honest, this one was really cool. It's kind of a secret.
Man, so many machines there, most of them in reasonable to good working order.
The older machines, just like you typically see with a lot of the arcades we've seen so far, there's just this issue where if there's an old machine and it doesn't work, it's gonna suck.
Right.
But there are plenty of newer machines that are in proper working order, including Rambo.
And Rambo is probably the best game we played there, and we played Mario Kart DX, and we really enjoyed Mario Kart DX.
We really like Mario Kart DX, that was fun, but Rambo?
Yeah, I want to buy that arcade machine.
But honestly, really cool experience, heavily recommend this. It's a hidden gem, totally lost to everybody. It definitely shouldn't be missed.
When we started planning this arcade adventure, one of the questions we were looking to answer was, what is the arcade's place in modern gaming culture?
And after just the first two stops, I think we have the answer. There are some gaming experiences you just can't easily get at home, but are still thriving in arcades.
The racing game, the light gun game, these are just two examples of immersive and physical arcade experiences that just aren't the same anywhere else.
While you might be able to fit a Donkey Kong cab in your den or living room, that Sega Rally experience, that's not gonna fit in your basement.
The more common arcades to see private collectors have are upright arcade cabinets, really almost any game that came housed in that classic rectangular design with the joystick and button controls.
For arcade owner-operators back in the day, the modular design was the most cost-efficient choice. Easily movable, easily placeable, easily playable.
The boxy design meant that it could be squished together side by side with other cabinets in tight spaces, perfect for maximizing space in the arcade.
And since many machines use similar parts, it was easy to replace their components.
For all these reasons, they're so collectible for arcade enthusiasts decades later. But what we've been keeping an eye out for are these larger-than-life experiences, the ones you can only get out here in arcades. Massive machines with tons of features that pull you into the game in ways you won't experience in your living room.
So for us, probing this vacation hotspot sprinkled with machines new and old, totally worth the effort.
Who knows what incredible arcade gems secretly await us around the next corner.
The next stop on our arcade tour is called Fun Zone.
Yes, we already went to a Fun Zone on Clifton Hill, but this is Fun Zone Fallsview, and it's located way over here, kind of at the other end of the falls.
Strange how there are two Fun Zone locations a fair distance from each other here in Niagara.
And it only gets stranger when you enter the building.
Okay, so this Fun Zone is located on 3 different floors of the same building. One is directly under another, accessible with a quick walk downstairs.
But the third section of this arcade is farther away. You have to zig and zag through some of the building and climb some stairs until you pass by an IHOP. This location is ultra tiny, just a handful of cabinets, some in such bad working order that I didn't even know why they bothered turning the machines on.
Anyway, we're showing you this space to say, forget about this space. The real reason you want to go to Fun Zone Fallsview is for those 2 connected floors we mentioned earlier. They house sprawling hallways with a nice assortment of coin-operated experiences.
Some of which we've never ever played before, like this. Dream Raiders.
Well, we're trying this.
It's probably the fastest moving on-rail shooter I've ever played in my entire life.
Jeez, the camera moves all over the place and there's action happening everywhere. It really does feel less like an arcade game and more like a freaking theme park ride.
And this motorcycle sequence is just pure dumb fun.
Is it really an amazingly fun game? Were we delirious from marching around playing arcades all day? Who's to say?
The game is pretty simple to play, and the levels are super short, but Dream Raiders has a good amount of them to choose from. And if you take out the level boss like a shooting ace, you even get access to bonus stages.
We unlocked a dragon stage. You shoot a dragon while riding a freaking dragon.
It's all we ever wanted in a Dream Raid shooty time.
Looking at the cabinet for Dark Escape 4D, I think we're in for some spooky time gasps.
Yeah, this one looks like a nightmare maker. The system is a completely enclosed experience inside a miniaturized theater-style cabinet.
This game has the option for a 3D mode, which typically goes hand in hand with your 4D entertainment experiences.
But the special glasses you need to wear to get the 3D effect, they're not here. We've got an empty glasses slot instead.
2D scares for us, I guess. Already enough to get our heart rate spiking.
And how would we know that?
Because this game tracks your heart rate. It's these little metal pieces on this laser cannon looking controller.
It's keeping track of how calm we are, which likely means it has
Jump scares. If the game senses you're not getting panicked enough, you get a jolt. Gets you almost every time.
The entire seat shakes and rumbles like crazy. Even if you think you know when it's gonna happen, the physical jolt still gets you. Pair that with those jump scares in the environment, and the game has us pretty on edge.
But they don't stop at just a rumbly seat to send the spookies. They also incorporate blasts of air.
Directly in my eyes!
Yeah, not great. You know what else ain't great? The actual gameplay in Dark Escape 4D.
Everything takes far too long to kill, and we're taking a ton of cheap hits from enemies that burst onto the screen and maim you near instantly.
Maybe the difficulty's ramped up in this title, maybe it's not, but it definitely doesn't feel fair.
Yeah, pretty underwhelming, but there is positivity to be had here.
Puffs of air in the face aside, the sense of atmosphere they managed to instill through this thing can be pretty compelling. Like when they softly blow air on the back of your neck.
Oh, you can feel the coldness in the basement. Yeah. Oh my god. It's a creepy feeling, but it's impressive. They really captured something special here.
So if you want the feeling of air being blown on the back of your neck, this is the game to play. Initial D, Stage 4.
Oh, cool. Adam, what is Initial D?
It's some kind of anime something or another. I'm not really the most knowledgeable type on this kind of stuff, but we know a guy. We just happened to bring along our friend to help us record this big trip who is really into the whole anime thing. Arcada, what the heck is Initial D?
Well, gentlemen, Initial D is a long-running manga and anime series that started in the mid-90s.
What's it about?
Cars. Lots and lots of cars, but it's special. It focuses on a driving technique born in the narrow streets and winding countryside hills covering the prefectures of Japan, drifting.
Oh, so it's like Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift.
No, it's like Initial D, not like the film that clearly ripped off Initial D.
I think I hit a nerve.
Drifting can be very difficult to achieve and control in real life.
But if we know Sega, they probably found a way around that. And boy, did they ever. This plays so smooth.
Sega's gamification of real-world complexity is on point here. They made this very easy to control.
There are a ton of stages with varying difficulties. This game embodies an easy-to-learn, hard-to-master mentality.
Anyone can give this a shot and do well enough, but it takes skill to really navigate the harder roads perfectly. I love games like this.
And with these two cabinets side by side, both you and I can duke it out on the slick streets of Japan.
Geez, it's little hard to stick to the roads. I keep bouncing off guardrails, especially when I'm up against a real player. I might need more practice. But Shane?
Drift.
Yeah, I think he's getting this faster than I am.
There are a bunch of Initial D cabinets published by Sega, and while a number of the early cabinets made the jump to home consoles, none of them had North American releases.
That's what makes this game important. It's another game experience locked to the arcades.
You can save your progress with a physical card that the cabinet can print for you. And why? Well, this arcade racing game has a plot. cutscenes and all. You can modify your car and unlock plenty of other extra options and features. Unfortunately, this cabinet isn't issuing new cards. I do have a license here from a different release of Initial D, but it isn't compatible with this version.
Well, from my short experience here, even without a card in play, there is still plenty to see and do in the game.
Guess we're done drifting for now. Let's check out another system.
Hey, Arcada, you coming? Arcada, buddy?
I don't think he can hear you, Shane. He's Initial D'ing. He's in his happy place.
Some say Arcada is still playing Initial D Stage 4 to this very day, drifting in the wind. Is that? Oh, it is! Batman!
I played plenty of Batman games where you embody the Dark Knight, pummeling crime with his fists and gadgets, so I'm really surprised to see what looks to be a driving game.
Clearly, we're about to drive the Batmobile, but which one?
Well, let's see. Looks like they have 10 of them.
10? 10 Batmobiles?
From the 1960s TV show version through to the film iterations. They even have the Batmobile from the animated series. This looks pretty simple to play. Pedals, steering yoke, and accessible buttons to fire weapons.
Batman is gonna backfire on fools.
From a distance, this may seem like a racing game, but don't be fooled. It's a car combat game.
You select a chapter right at the start that has its own fully voiced cutscenes that feature Batman's infamous rogues gallery. Each one contains multiple missions and objectives set on the mean streets of Gotham City.
This game moves fast. It's action-packed and introduces different elements as you play on. Like here, where we get to a section that has a switch to aerial combat in the Batwing.
On the asphalt or in the air, the game plays the same, and the objectives are pretty easy to follow. Shoot this, destroy that, save this person.
99% of the time, though, we're shooting enemy vehicles.
But they return fire against us twice as fast. The real challenge here is avoiding taking damage, but seemingly there doesn't seem a way to really prevent it.
You'll get downed again and again, making the whole thing feel unfair. It's a shame because there's a lot to love here, even if you're not a Batman fan. But if you are into all things Dark Knight, this is a must-play title with plenty of nods to the world and characters you love.
Just be prepared to spend a fistful of tokens if you want to see it all.
The Fun Zone at Fallsview.
This arcade location had probably the most working units or in the best condition.
That's what I would
Would
say,
you agree?
yeah. I think if you go there, you might only expect to see that one level, but if you go, don't mistake that one level for all the games that are there.
If you don't go into that basement, you're doing yourself a disservice. There's so many cool things.
Yeah, you'll find an Initial D Stage 4, and that's not a common game to find around here, so it's really cool to see that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thrilling.
After that last arcade, the next arcade is in Embassy Suites.
The next stop on our arcade tour is special. We couldn't find any record of it anywhere online. This is an arcade several floors up in the Embassy Suites Hotel, an impressively large building at the bottom of our tourist trap territory map.
The arcade is actually located inside a restaurant called The Keg.
It's a steakhouse. They serve steaks. But we're not here for prime rib. We're here for prime gaming.
This arcade isn't going to wow anyone in terms of machine quantity or variety, but it does pass our rule of having at least 10 titles, so it's gotta be mentioned.
It's spread between two rooms, both on either side of what looks like spillover seating for the Keg.
With the smell of premium food wafting around us, it's time we figure out if this arcade is a rare delicacy or something that fell on the floor.
Razing Storm. Okay, I am very familiar with this game. I've got the PlayStation 3 version at home, but we've got foot pedals here in the arcade, something you don't have out of the box on the PS3.
With that pedal, I can bring up a shield to block attacks and reload my weapon. I really like this. Most shooters leave you out in the open, totally defenseless. Your survival relies solely on how fast you can take out enemies.
Having this extra cover element, though, it makes the damage you take in-game feel more like you faltered strategically rather than simply not being quick on the draw.
The foot pedal feature feels incredibly intuitive, too. You understand how it works in seconds. And because hiding is not relegated to a button press on the controller, you can keep your fingers locked on the inputs that do the important shooty shoots.
Seriously, more light gun games should be using this.
Hey look, another light gun game in the back. Have you ever heard of a game called Paradise Lost?
I definitely don't recognize this game. Let's give it a shot.
Ooh, oh, no, this is really rough. The frame rate is awful.
It's pretty hard to aim at stuff when the enemies stutter on screen like this. And if that wasn't bad enough, the actual shooting and enemy hit response feels incredibly underwhelming.
Why is this all so familiar to me? Island? The enemies? What? Hey, this is Far Cry.
What? The old first-person shooter Far Cry?
Yeah, look at that marquee art. That's just the box art for Far Cry Instincts, a title released for the original Xbox.
It makes sense now. Why the gameplay feels shallow and the character assets are all weird and jittery. This was all slapped together with Far Cry scraps to make an arcade game.
I'm confused though as to why they didn't use the Far Cry name. It's a pretty well-known franchise. Fans of the series might miss this if they were walking through an arcade and saw the name Paradise Lost instead.
Well, speaking as someone playing this right now, this thing is probably best kept ignored by fans of Far Cry. It's a thoroughly awful, stuttery, by-the-numbers shooting title. I think this is the worst arcade game we've played so far.
But is the game itself terrible, or has the machine just been badly maintained?
I guess we'll need to have a look at what the rest of this arcade has on offer. Let's get critical.
We've got another Blazing Angels machine.
But the frame rate of the game seems to be off.
And look behind Blazing Angels. This dead heat cabinet is locked up.
And this Virtua tennis monitor has crazy burn-in.
And this skiing game is missing the rubber grips that are supposed to go on these handles.
And this Fast and Furious Superbikes has a janked second bike that smears you to the side when you race.
And this Keymaster game is rigged. It's stealing my money.
Okay, yeah, but every Keymaster game feels rigged and steals your money.
All right, fine. That's normal. But everything else here seems to be in shoddy shape. You might not realize it when you first look at the games, but when you go to play them, bam, instant disappointment.
Wow, talk about leaving a bad impression. If this was the first arcade you visited in Niagara Falls, you might assume the whole area had games not worth playing.
Aside from Razing Storm, does this place have any other redeeming titles or games at all that we can point to before we wrap up today?
Well, it does have Super Chexx Hockey.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Bubble Hockey Matchup of the Year, Shane versus Addams, sponsored by Super Chexx Hockey in a dilapidated arcade.
Shane's lining up a shot on Addams' net. Oh, denied.
Now Addams flying in, returning the favor, and he scores! 1-0 for Addams, and he looks pretty chuffed about that.
Shane's doing the old skate puck shuffle up the ice. He takes the shot right between the pipes. Shane has tied it up.
The pressure is on. It's all down to that last point. Addams lining up his shot. Shane's defensive man can't quite seem to reach the puck. Adam takes it, and Adam wins the game and the series.
When we were walking around, we found so many games that were just one token, which is really impressive because that's not expensive, but you get access to so many games for so little money.
Yeah.
But
Can I just say this? One token, it's broken. There was one experience, the most Canadian experience of all.
That's true.
That we did actually enjoy, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't broken.
Super Chexx.
Super Chexx.
Look, we don't really play that game, but it was the most functioning game there. It worked. It was really fun. It's very responsive because it's just basically sticks on poles, and it just worked.
It sticks on poles, and it's your reason to come out to the Niagara region and go to the Embassy Suites.
But what really blew my mind was just the state of the games.
Skip this one.
Yeah, not worth it.
We resume our search for the best arcade in Niagara Falls with some caution because the next stop on our tour could be a bust. We've only heard mere rumors it even exists.
Yes, for legend hath spoke of an incredible location, a space that could be very, very worthwhile on this game's tour. So we're heading into a building that doesn't really look like it would have an arcade nowadays.
Skylon Tower, a soaring beacon of Niagara tourism. Constructed in 1964, this monumental needle was originally financed by the son of the guy that invented Reese's peanut butter cups.
Huh, the tower looks a little like a Reese's cup on a scepter.
You know, now that you say it, yeah, kind of see it now.
But no more delaying. It's time to see if the stories are true.
Even if an arcade with classic machines did exist around here in the last decade, there's a darn good chance it doesn't exist today.
Gotta look for it anyways. Even if it's just one or two machines now, I want to know.
Welcome to the fantasy zone. Get ready.
Oh, wow.
It's actually really real.
The legend spoke true. Skylon Arcade.
Take it in. Look at this. Nothing against modern hardware, but this place is brimming with old school awesomeness.
This is the only place we've seen so far with any of these titles.
Despite a few outliers, most of the units here seem to be on and in some form of working order. There are systems that even look pretty close to the way they did on release, like these Tekken 3 and Tekken Tag units.
This title fight with dual screens, One side is off, the other is on. The controls have seen better days.
Look, a real original Super Monaco GP. This thing's from 1989.
Unfortunately, the game seems to be a little busted, likely due to a corrupted game board. But the fact that this machine is even here is crazy.
Yeah, there are a few machines around that do seem to be turned off.
We better get playing to see what's working and what isn't. What should we try first?
They have a sit-down Space Harrier cabinet, which is actually pretty uncommon to see. These cabs moved you around with the gameplay.
Yes, 30 years ago, maybe. But now, these components have a 0 chance of being in working order. But at least the monitor seems to be hanging on.
Let's give it a go.
Oh, it works!
Dude, are you kidding?
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I have dabbled with Space Harrier. No, I'm not the greatest at the game, but I've played it many times over countless years. I can honestly say I have never played a Space Harrier cab with actual moving hardware. I'm dumbfounded.
Space Harrier is already an impressively fast-paced game thanks to its superscalar graphics. All sprites, no 3D models. Enemies fly at you quickly. Trying to blast them away in these crazy sci-fi worlds feels even more engrossing as you get shifted around while playing.
And it's an absolute joy to experience, completely unexpected. While this hardware isn't performing flawlessly, you don't really notice the blemishes when you're physically moving along with the gameplay like this. It's pretty magical.
Hard not to smile when this thing gets going. And if you're good at Space Harrier, you'll get plenty of airtime as you shoot through these classic stages.
Check this out! The machine is so old it even has an officially branded Sega ashtray attached to it.
That is not an aftermarket add-on, my friends. This is legit Sega.
If Space Harrier was all we got to experience in Skylon's treasure trove, we'd already be walking away happy. But of course, there's more. I haven't seen an Afterburner 2 motion cabinet in decades.
And back then, it might have been normal to see these two machines side by side in an arcade, but it's very uncommon now.
So we got lucky with Space Harrier actually having mostly working movement, but I don't expect to have Afterburner running as well. It's working! This is like winning the lottery!
Afterburner's movement is in an even better state than Space Harrier. Unfortunately, the screen is a little worse for wear.
This is still running off a real CRT screen, and it's just barely keeping it together. This is borderline unplayable, unfortunately.
It's really hard to make out what's happening at almost all times.
But the feel of the game, the lightning-fast lock-on gameplay, it's all here. When you can make it out, that is.
Now, if I personally had to pick between the two, I'm going Space Harrier. I like the gameplay way more. Plus, I could actually see the game.
I agree. Between the two games, this one is the one to play. But that doesn't mean you should skip out on Afterburner.
And you know what else I'm not skipping out on? That game over there. Would you look at this absolute classic? Star Wars Trilogy Arcade.
And by trilogy, we mean original trilogy. This game goes through major scenes from the first 3 Star Wars films from the 70s and 80s.
You've got space combat, first-person shooting sequences, speeder bike driving, and even a lightsaber duel with Darth Vader himself.
Every moment of this game is controlled with simple joystick inputs.
Now, I'm not a big fan of walking around the Hoth base shooting enemies in first person while utilizing a flight joystick, but it does work well enough.
I agree, not ideal controls, but the majority of the game is focused on so many different styles of gameplay that it's kind of impressive how well this input system actually works.
Sadly, this is a Sega game that never made it home, which for a property as popular as Star Wars is pretty surprising.
But don't think this is the only Star Wars game we're playing here.
Oh really? What else do they have?
Star Wars Racer Arcade.
No way! The full deluxe sit-down version that mimics the pod racer scene from Episode 1.
Now, I'm a fan of the home version of this game. Used to play that all the time on the N64, but I'm just noticing here, this is not that game.
Right? The home release is a fleshed-out experience with tons of different levels and vehicles.
This arcade version, though, the levels are different. And the controls?
Oh, buddy, let me tell you about these controls. You've got one throttle for each hand. Adjusting both back and forth lets you steer the pod racer and also affects your speed.
It's just like how it looks in the movie.
Look, it might just be me, but this game feels faster than the home release. That, combined with a button-activated boost, makes it feel almost too fast to control at moments.
You've gotta experience the arcade version of pod racing. It really feels like nothing else.
We would have liked to play this head-to-head, but unfortunately, the second system was out of commission.
But other versus racing titles were up and running, like this, Manx TT Superbike. Up until this point, we've played a handful of motorcycle-style machines where you sit on what is basically a bike controller to steer your vehicle.
This usually works by leaning left or right.
But that's not how this one works. The steering in this is actually leagues better. You sort of twist the bike beneath you. It feels strangely realistic and intuitive.
It's giving me way more control than I expected. I accidentally picked manual mode for this race, and my driving still felt effortless. Heck, I managed to get in first place.
This game has got a nice, fast arcade feeling, but puts in just enough realistic notes to give you a solid sense of immersion.
The graphics might not be up to the standards of modern games,
but the gameplay, that hasn't aged a day.
I can't believe how good this is, even compared to motorcycle games released today.
Over here, we've got another Sega Super GT. We saw this yesterday in Adventure City, but this one looks like it's in far better condition.
It is. The controls and buttons all seem to be on point. The only issue is that, like in Adventure City, the mechanism that should shift the seat around isn't working here either.
But hey, if you're in Niagara Falls and want to try Super GT, the unit in Skylon is the one to play.
I'm starting to notice a kind of Sega theme going on here.
No kidding, right? There are so many Sega games in play on the floor, like this blast from the past over here.
The Lost World Jurassic Park. This is another great multiplayer light gun title from Sega that, unfortunately, never found its way to home consoles.
With its cool theater-style cabinet, surround sound speakers, and full 3D gameplay, it was an incredibly impressive shoot fest.
But this hardware's definitely seen better days. Seems like they're doing whatever they can to keep this thing going. Check out this light gun.
Two halves clearly clipped together from different colored controllers. Hey, you do what you gotta do with hardware that's been out of production for decades, right?
How about this display? There's a slight red hue to the image. Definitely old, definitely hard to replace.
Getting into it, this game is still a banger. I love seeing this mid-90s polygonal representation of the Jurassic Park area. I think the kind of bulky, cartoony look still holds up really well.
The game's action-packed. Loads of movement to different locales with buckets and buckets of dinos to make become quiet.
Make become quiet?
It's what the outside of the cabinet says we're doing.
Oh, weird. Anyway, this game is a great example of 90s light gun titles. You choose when you reload by firing away from the screen, and every once in a while, if you're a crack shot, you can even save a civilian and get helpful power-ups.
There are QuickTime style sequences in the game as well, where you need to fire precisely at different targets in order to succeed. Unfortunately, both of our controllers feel like their aiming calibration is more than a bit off.
At least that's what we tell ourselves.
That is one big pile of
crap. Let's get out of here.
I feel like I need a rinse. Hey, Adam.
Yeah, Shane?
You know the name of this one?
Good sir, I do believe that automotive doodad is called
Daytona! Folks, if you don't know, this was one of Sega's biggest moneymakers in the mid-90s.
Daytona USA has been ported, remastered, re-released, and iterated on extensively. These hulking things used to be at all the coolest play spaces. No lie, it's one of the most recognizable arcade machines of all time.
You ready to race?
I was born ready to race!
Are you in? It's not reading it.
Geez, great. My Daytona cab ate my tokens. Looks like I'm taking a back seat on this one.
Bad luck considering all the systems you had to choose from. Well, mine turned on, but I'm not as good at this as I thought I'd be. This game still has that classic arcade difficulty edge to it.
True, Daytona is not for the timid virtual racer.
Because of their age, size, and components, it's wonderful to see even one Daytona machine in arcades nowadays.
But it's something extraordinary to be in a space with 5 linked systems, even if you have a 1 in 5 chance of losing your tokens.
Let's try another multiplayer game. Ooh, how about this? 18-wheeler American Pro Trucker.
I'm a sucker for games from this era. I played a lot of Sega arcade games back in the late 90s and early 2000s. They made some pretty high-concept titles back then.
And this one's pretty nuts. I mean, look at this cab. It actually looks like a cab. It's safe to assume this is the only arcade we'll play with exhaust stacks today.
Hop in and we have this true-to-life massive steering wheel to control our rig. But no worries, this game isn't trying to be a simulation.
Not even close. In typical Sega fashion, they've taken the complicated task of transport truck driving and soaked it head to toe in ease of use.
Yep, it's super fun to play with straightforward objectives. You basically want to get your cargo to the finish line as quickly as you can and do it before the competition. You're even given mini goals like taking out specific vehicles for a time bonus.
The characters, rigs, and voice acting in this game are so over the top, they've left orbit.
On the control panel, you have a gear shifting system that's about as simple as one of these things can get. Feels like you barely need to use this thing once you're really flying along.
The world around you is filled with plenty of great details. Signage, helicopters, we even come head-to-head with a tornado in one stage. And our AI trucker rival seems to be in more of a rush than we are.
I don't get it though, man. You said this was 2 players. Feels like I'm doing everything. What exactly does player 2 do here?
Well, I only have access to one button over here, but it does this.
Okay, yeah, Shane, yeah, we get it. Yeah, we got it. Yeah, Shane! Come on, man! Shane!
Here's something special. If we're going to go on about interesting sit-down Sega machines, we've got to talk about Desert Tank.
This is an arcade game I'm pretty sure neither of us has ever actually seen in person.
It's a tank simulation game from the mid-90s that feels a few years ahead of its time. The cabinet car itself houses a gas pedal, forward and reverse shifter, plenty of buttons, and a steering yoke.
Oh, that yoke looks like it's seen action.
Oh, it has. But sitting down and firing this bad boy up, it still plays pretty well for the most part. And this thing is surprising. I can feel the shots coming out of the tank through the steering yoke. When you fire your tank's cannon, the yoke kicks back.
Yeah, this polygonal gameplay may look rudimentary because of the time period in which this thing was developed, but look at that steering mechanism, Buck!
Your shots have an amazing sense of power to them, typically not something you feel in games that incorporate driving and combat. It's awesome blowing up other tanks to shrapnel in this thing.
Shane, I'm a simple man. I see a crazy taxi machine, I play it.
The soundtrack to this game is iconic. If you know it, you just glimpse the logo and it starts rocking through your skull.
Absolutely, but speaking of sounds, we can't forget the game's phenomenal announcer. This guy's the best.
Hey, come on over, have some fun with Crazy Taxi!
The point of Crazy Taxi is to get riders to requested locations as quickly as possible. You want to rake in cab fare and hopefully get a good license ranking when the timer runs out.
The gameplay loop in this game is straightforward. Where things get action-packed and frantic is in the driving. Check it out. The city is buzzing with other vehicles, and you don't want to give these drivers space.
Get nice and close if you can. Near misses nab extra cab fare. Getting plenty of air does as well. This is a game that's constantly screaming at you to push the limits of your driving.
Crazy Taxi has been ported to several consoles and has been included in different compilations, but we recommend only playing the versions that feature music tracks by The Offspring. Yes, it matters.
Even though you can play different versions of this arcade at home, nothing quite beats the feel of sitting down and taking the wheel on a machine like this. Do I have time for one more run?
Well, no, we have to keep moving. But the good news is that there's something here at Skylon that looks strangely similar to Crazy Taxi.
Oh, no way. What is it?
Check this out. Frenzy Express.
This looks nothing like Crazy Taxi. It looks like something that's maimed children for decades.
I'll admit I've never heard of Frenzy Express, but come on, we gotta try this. It's most of an actual scooter welded into a cabinet. Kicking off the rotating cylinder on the side is weirdly natural, and when you move over a cobblestone path in the game, you feel the waves and bumps jittering the scoop board.
It's too bad the experience kind of bottoms out after the initial novelty factor wears off. Trying the game myself, Shane's initial thoughts on this thing are right. This is like Crazy Taxi, but with slower, far more cumbersome controls.
Yeah, you're a courier that is picking up and delivering packages the most efficient way possible, on a scooter. A scooter that takes a billion kicks to get moving. A scooter that turns like a freighter. A scooter that never quite stops where you want the scooter to stop.
Look, at the end of the day, Frenzy just ain't as good as Crazy. This feels like a very natural arcade transition, from Scoot to Shred.
This is Top Skater, a title that predates the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater series.
And because of that, it plays nothing like it.
Nope. Top Skater's controlled with a skateboard that you push and kick up to flip and jump and perform tricks in game.
Now, I'm no skateboarder, not even a little, but after reading the controls on the system, I'm having a pretty rad time doing my best to pull off moves. I remember playing this when I was younger and not quite getting how the game actually worked. It's about biding your time and kicking off the board controller in different ways at just the right moment.
Once you get it, steering and getting air doesn't always feel perfect. But Sega did a decent job gamifying this extreme sport in a very interesting looking arcade machine.
It's fun, but it feels like it has less depth to gameplay and less character in its overall presentation than other Sega games we've seen today.
Call me crazy, but I think Coca-Cola might have paid for a sponsorship in this game.
What makes you say that, Coca-Cola?
No reason.
Coca-Cola.
No reason at all.
Coca-Cola.
This.
Oh.
This is the most used Simpsons arcade cabinet we've ever seen.
That right there. Hours and hours of rough play, years of sharp jewelry shredding the panel, decades of, controlling the game with an angle grinder.
Scratched, destroyed, wood rubbed raw.
Sounds painful. And you just know they haven't made replacement parts in decades.
Well, I want to play, but as an admirer of fine historic art, I refuse to disturb the panel's natural patina.
Don't worry, folks. We came prepared.
The two of us, we've played this game before.
And we're big fans.
The Simpsons Arcade was developed by Konami. It's a side-scrolling beat-em-up featuring the titular cast of the show, and then some.
This game was developed and released pretty early in the run of the series, and it definitely shows.
Yeah, Bart's donning a far less familiar shirt color, and the characteristically dull and calm Smithers is...
basically a mustache-twirling villain.
Can he not see he inadvertently kidnapped a child along with whatever diamond he actually tried to pinch? Put the baby down, you maniac!
Unlike the cabinet we're playing on, the gameplay doesn't feel aged in the slightest. This was simple fun to play decades ago, and it's just as good now.
Games like this are the reason 16-bit style beat-em-ups have had a renaissance. The screen is slathered with callbacks to the TV series and the world. Characters and moves are all beautifully animated.
It was certainly nice to play it again, though. I mean, without disturbing all that history. Holy crap, you gotta be kidding me. They even have a motorized sit-down Galaxy Force version too. That platform you sit on, it actually tilts you around with the gameplay.
Do you know how rare these things are? I've honestly never shared the same space as one. To our complete and utter surprise, we got this.
It's up and running!
Okay, yeah, the monitor's on. That alone is pretty awesome. But there is no freaking way that the most complicated standalone machine on the floor is still functional, right? It's incredible. How is this working? How is one of the rarest arcade machines on the planet still incredibly functional? The controls, the sounds, the mechanisms allowing this thing to twirl around, it all works.
Galaxy Force is an on-rails spaceship shooter with a lock-on mechanic to take out swarms of enemy targets with heat-seeking missiles.
It's another game that utilizes Sega's superscalar technique, which means plenty of objects grow in size as they jet by your craft. As you can see, it creates a great sense of speed as your ship tears through the galaxy.
Laser blasting, enemy dodging, deadly sci-fi expanse traversing, Galaxy Force is fun. But look at this thing. We've got to talk about the seated experience, because good gosh, when you jolt the flight stick up, down, and to the sides, this thing swings wonderfully in response.
The sensation this rig gives you goes insane lengths in connecting you with Galaxy Force's action. You can feel the heft of every joystick shift, and when your turns are this visceral, it really makes you pay attention to carefully navigate your ship.
It's frickin' magic that this thrill ride of a cab is still shifting around. Hard to believe the thing is still being serviced for regular play.
Ooh, I think I need a breather. Anyone up for a couple leisurely frames of bowling?
Bowlingo? Whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm seeing something crazy here. Look, right here. Capcom.
Whoa, but Capcom?
Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Look at this. It takes tokens. These lanes, this whole thing, it's an arcade game.
So this is Capcom Bowlingo, a mini bowling game neither of us had any idea existed.
Galaxy Force and Bowlingo, these are complicated systems. We're also seeing so many old systems with unique mechanisms still surprisingly playable here.
Just who or what is keeping these prehistoric contraptions kicking?
We don't have to wonder long, because the same person that made sure we could ace a few mini bowling frames actually approached us. He tells us about his history and work at Skylon Tower.
His name is Tim.
He is a wizard.
And he's one of the location's longtime staff. But he told us about everything he does to keep all this going. Tim has been dissecting and reassembling many of these machines since they were new.
But unfortunately, some components are becoming more of a challenge to replace. Old CRT screens have been an issue. The CRT in this Afterburner, for example, not so simple to augment or restore.
And it's not because of Tim's lack of technical skill. What it really boils down to is time and money, the price of upkeep. Some machines require longer working hours to fix than others.
Not a lot of funding is pushed towards keeping these amazing old gaming relics in playable condition, but having more players stop in, drop tokens, and enjoy these fascinating machines, that certainly helps. So if you're ever in an arcade and see an older game you're interested in, give it a shot. You're showing the owners that older machines are still profitable.
You're also showing how incredibly important people with knowledge and experience like Tim are to maintaining these wonderful devices as well.
And that was the Skylon Fun Center, which is kind of a surprise because there isn't any one brand new machine, you know? Like a lot of it is just ancient arcade machines.
Yeah.
After the experience we had at Embassy, which had actually brand new games.
It's in total disrepair.
I'm thinking a lot of these are just not gonna work.
Yeah.
But surprisingly, there was a lot of stuff there that was actually functional, and that just blew me away.
There's a lot of love-hate going on here. There is a lot of functional stuff. If you do know what the gems are and you do find them, you're gonna have a great time.
Yep.
Looking at this purely as almost like a historical museum or library of old cabs, just seeing them.
Yeah.
Just seeing like a Galaxy Force version 2
Right.
physically in front of you is an awesome thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's almost worth coming here just to have that sort of wave of history all around you.
This is a crazy place. Don't miss it. There are actual interesting games here, legacy games, historical games,
Absolutely.
vintage games, but some that are just worth coming to Niagara Falls alone for.
Now, we've been talking a lot about vintage arcade gaming here at Skylon, but it's probably time we balance things out by going to a place with a more modern flair.
We've got one last arcade in this area, but before we get to it, we have to leave the country. We said we're experiencing every arcade in Niagara Falls, and we weren't kidding.
That's right, and Niagara Falls isn't just one city, it's two.
Niagara Falls, Ontario, Canada, and Niagara Falls, New York, USA.
American, Canadian, there have been debates over which side of the falls has a more breathtaking view, but what can't be argued is what side has more money invested in tourist attractions. Canada, all the way.
Now, as you saw at Clifton Hill, a tourism industry arose on the Canadian side of the falls that brought along a ton of arcades.
But we need to know what's going on over here, on the American side.
We are venturing across the border to snoop.
The first operational arcade we visit is called Arcade at the Falls.
Marked by a big illuminated arcade sign.
Strangely, just like Adventure City back in Canada, this arcade shares a location with Rainforest Cafe.
They've got two rainforest cafes directly across the border from one another.
Must be pretty popular.
You know what's not popular? This place.
No one's here. And look around. There are great-looking modern games just sitting here.
Like any arcade, one or two systems seem to be down for repairs, but you can easily spend some time here and have plenty of fun.
They also have an axe-throwing game I've never seen before. Neat.
The second arcade we visited was joined by a restaurant called Anchor Bar. The Great American Arcade consists of 2 floors. The first is smaller with very few titles.
And the second, loaded with a much larger selection.
While there are some new titles here, most are ticket redemption games, which is great if you're really into that kind of thing, but we could go for a bit more diversity. We like our video arcade games.
Both of the arcades we've seen so far on this side of the border are within walking distance of one another.
But we needed to park in the vicinity before we started our search. We found a lot, and after we paid to park, the ticket machine shot out a voucher for Vortex VR Arcade.
It's one of the businesses inside this huge building we just parked in front of. But look, $20 for free. We gotta at least have a look.
Up some stairs, we get this.
An entire floor loaded with new-looking, functional arcade units.
Don't get us wrong, some of the locations we saw on the Canada side had more, but this was by no means small potatoes.
There's a decent amount of variety here, and since we have our voucher, we get to play at no additional cost. It's pretty awesome.
About the only thing I don't like about Vortex V Arcade is the noise. It is very, very loud in this space. So loud that when I play this Asphalt Legends cabinet, I actually had to stop playing before I even finished the race. It was obnoxiously loud. The machine volume is crazy high. It was an incredibly uncomfortable experience.
If you bring your earplugs, this is probably probably the arcade to visit on this side of Niagara Falls, especially if you already paid for parking here. It's a no-brainer.
And yeah, that's what they've got out here. Those 3 arcades. Some good games and cool spaces, but the experience feels a bit dwarfed by what we've seen on the Canada side so far.
But we're not done over in the land of the Maple Leaf just yet.
Nope, let's head back over the border.
Back in the weird world of Clifton Hill, nestled in tourist trap territory,
Strike Game Zone. And as we walk in, we're met with this, a game card dispensing machine.
turns out they utilize that fancy modern digital card system for tokens that we mentioned earlier. Guess we don't need the fanny packs anymore.
I guess not.
Looking around, the majority of the games here are redemption titles, all about getting those sweet, sweet digital tickets.
Out of all the arcades we visited on the Canadian side of the Falls, this one features some of the newest games we've encountered.
This Rick and Morty machine, brand new, released the same year we're visiting.
So if you thought every arcade around here was a rusting collection of old machines, this place destroys that assumption completely.
We've got famous intellectual properties like Warner Brothers cartoons and Nightmare Clown Grifter Swindles Children.
I feel like I'm being scammed.
But wait, over in the corner, there's a familiar-looking sit-down experience.
Space Invaders Frenzy. This looks like the same style of cabinet as the Bust-A-Move Frenzy we saw back at Adventure City. This seems to be an updated version of the stone-cold arcade super hit, Space Invaders. Instead of sliding back and forth, shooting up at descending aliens,
you're aiming and firing those same Bust-A-Move blasters at invaders as fast as you can.
We're playing two-player mode. We're trying to clear the playfield as much as possible while sort of competing against each other for the highest score. Just like with Bust-A-Move Frenzy, Space Invaders Frenzy is a game that speeds along at a brisk pace. It's also a ticket redemption title.
But it's so fun that, again, this doesn't feel like it needs to give out tickets. It easily deserves a spot in any arcade through its sheer fun and bombastic gameplay.
Right. Receiving tickets at the end is just icing on the... did you just win 1,000 tickets?
Yeah, looks like it.
And you just did that on your first try.
Yep. Some of the arcades here in Niagara Falls use old-style paper tickets for your winnings, but it's all digital in this location.
It all goes straight to the arcade card, but it isn't instantaneous. You gotta wait as it transfers each ticket. During this, the game screen becomes this giant beacon alerting everyone at how much you just won.
Even with what you'd assume is a load of tickets, you never end up getting much at a place like this. But really, it's not about the prizes. It's about the memories, right?
Yeah. I'll never forget this.
But we're not done just yet.
Because the Strike Zone isn't a standalone arcade. In fact, it's actually part of a larger arcade in the exact same building, the Great Canadian Midway. This is a special place.
You see, this isn't just the largest arcade space in Clifton Hill, it's the largest arcade in all of Niagara Falls, Canada, and USA.
Aside from the falls themselves and of all the tourist attractions around, this is the place you need to experience, especially if you're a fan of video games.
It's a staggering arcade space with amusement rides, a gazillion flashing lights, and dozens upon dozens of arcade games.
It's also, without a doubt, the loudest arcade we've seen, or heard, but strangely, it doesn't feel overwhelming.
You know why? Because the place has monumentally high ceilings. Unlike other stuffed arcades we've seen, sound has space to dissipate here.
I mean, don't get us wrong, it's still loud, just not as overwhelming as you might expect it to be. Yeah, I could see myself playing more than a few games here.
Let's get to it.
How about we try Cruis'n Blast? This is the newest game in the Cruis'n series, the first to hit arcade since Cruis'n Exotica almost 20 years later.
Holy crap, that's wild! Back in the day when you saw a Cruis'n game, you knew you were in for a good time with a racing title that leaned more into fun than realism.
And check it out, the cab definitely plays up that fun vibe you were talking about, with bright colors, flashing lights, and great music.
Getting into the game, we've got a handful of tracks set in locations across the globe,
with plenty of slick-looking licensed vehicles to slightly modify and toss on the road. And yes, of course, you still have a smattering of secret vehicles you can choose from.
The Cruis'n games iterated on the series formula a little from game to game, bringing in things like boosts and tricks. We're happy to see those tweaked touches here as well.
You'd think that after not having an arcade release for decades, the driving itself might have changed jarringly, but honestly, they stuck pretty close to the feel of this beloved series.
Every level has jumps, ramps, and obstacles like oncoming vehicles. And just like in some other Cruis'n titles, when you double tap your gas pedal, your car gets a boost. bucking off the road. You can even get air, allowing you to somersault over things that dare try to get in your way.
There are also set-piece moments like the London Eye breaking loose and rolling through the city, or the ground beneath your vehicle breaking apart as your vehicle jets towards an endless chasm.
This is really incredibly fun all around. As we mentioned when we were playing Cruis'n Exotica earlier, Cruis'n is a Nintendo-owned property. So this big arcade system, developed by Thrills, this is also a Nintendo arcade game.
That probably explains why they brought this game home to Switch.
Having played both games back to back, we can confirm that the feel of the arcade game is largely intact with the home release.
But the home release is tweaked with some extra features to make it more palatable as a console title.
And I gotta say, even if you have a copy of this on Switch, that doesn't mean you should skip out on the arcade version. Being sat next to an opponent in this cab for some head-to-head speed carnage is way more immersive and fun than playing on a couch or online. Look over there. Is that Jurassic Park?
Ooh, but this one isn't a Sega joint. It's a totally different manufacturer, Thrills.
If this at least matches the feel of Sega's Jurassic Park game, it could be a pretty cool modernization.
Yeah, it could. Plenty to shoot here. But,
What's going on here? Are you liking this?
well, it's okay, I guess?
I consider that original Lost World title a classic Sega light gun game. Move to different spaces, take out targets that telegraph their movements and attacks. It's that classic Sega design.
The game would switch things up with target-based quick-time sequences and bosses, but no matter what it tossed at you, it always felt pretty fair.
Here, things are a little more frantic. You're barraged with enemies constantly. It feels like it's taken way too long to take some of these dinos out. And everything is so crazy, we end up taking cheap damage from enemies before we have time to react.
You do have a weapon that can continuously fire, which helps, but it feels far less elegant and skill-dependent than a weapon that needs to be thoughtfully reloaded.
Look, it's not a bad game. The graphics and visual design are a huge improvement over the other. There's no getting around that. But the camera jumping around constantly, you end up shooting things you don't mean to shoot.
It's a decent light gun game, but honestly, I think it's just gonna pull way too many tokens out of you to finish. If you compare this to the Sega game we played earlier, well, this one doesn't really feel like the same kind of fun trip to Jurassic Park.
Cool. Wasn't expecting Addams Family Pinball.
The single most popular, most produced pinball table of all time. Publicly accessible machines like this require a lot more upkeep than most people realize. There are lots of components that need to be serviced to keep a table like this in tip-top condition.
So it looks like it's been taken care of, but how's it play?
Very, very good. It's nearly perfect. Speakers blown out, making the voice lines a little crunchy, but the rest of the game is playing pretty spot on. I love this table. It comes from an era of pinball where they were doing pretty crazy stuff with the machines.
What can it do?
Well, it's got some hidden elements. There's stuff all over the place. Cool mechanical secrets like this.
Would you look at that? Things snagging the pinball.
They also use magnets to physically mess with your gameplay at points. Watch this.
I didn't really know they put those kind of details into these tables.
As long as it's properly taken care of, it can be ultra fun to play, but maintenance is a requirement.
Impressive that it's in such good shape then. And it speaks volumes to how a space like this is run.
No arcade has every machine up and running all the time, but I think it's fair to assume that if something like this is in such great condition, then we probably aren't going to find too many games in need of repairs here.
Speaking of machines being down for repair, we almost got to play another House of the Dead title here, but this one seems to be out of commission. Dang.
This is too bad. This is another cool-looking feeder cab.
Even in the best arcades, machines are going to need to be serviced, regardless of their age.
It's the reality of the business. If the establishment is on the ball, they post up signage telling players to skip the game for now, and likely having a repair technician coming in to look at it ASAP.
Let's go ahead and get into a game that's ready for action. We gotta try out Halo Fireteam Raven.
This is a massive cabinet.
Look at the size of that play space.
2 huge connected screens. That's a lot of real estate.
And a lot of seating.
This has got to be the biggest theater-style arcade cabinet we've seen.
And it happens to be based on Halo, the huge first-person shooter franchise from Xbox.
See that? Not afraid to call the cabinet after its famous namesake. That's how you do it, Paradise Lost.
You get to play as one of 4 characters, but unfortunately, as far as I can tell, none of them are the iconic hero of the series, Master Chief.
I've gotta be brutally honest here. The game is just not clicking for me.
Same. And I think the problem boils down to these screens. With such a large area to cover, it feels like your attention is pulled all over the place. It's hard to focus on any one spot on the field, especially with enemies appearing on the screen not directly in front of me.
Yeah, the scale of this thing is really cool, but it seems detrimental to any configuration of players that isn't a full house. I can see the chaotic nature of this thing being handled properly with 4 players, but that's not how we're playing it today.
Adding on to that, I got hardware issues. The reload button on the back of my controller is smashed in.
Gotta love when the public purposely damages controllers for no reason.
But the graphics are clean, easy to make out what's happening in your general vicinity. The action and pacing is also pretty solid. Plus, they've got cutscenes that weave in a story for fans of the Halo narrative.
All that said, it feels like the shooting mechanics are slightly off here. My shots don't give me the kind of feedback I'd expect from a Halo game, or just a solid on-rail shooter.
Very unfortunate with a cab that, at surface level, looks incredible.
While this might pull you in with its flair, scale, and use of a popular license, it's not a game we immediately connected with. Maybe we need to try this out with a bigger team next time.
Let's go jungle! Lost on the Island of Spice. Looks like we've got another theater-style light gun cabinet.
But this one has something special to it. Adam, what does this game make you think of?
It does seem awfully familiar, but can't quite put my finger on it.
Well, this game right here has the exact same director as The Lost World.
Ah, so that's why it feels so familiar. The shooting, the target-based boss battles, heck, even the look of the environments.
If you're a fan of that earlier Sega Jurassic Park title, you're getting something slightly updated here. Higher resolution graphics, tweaked controls, and lots of new things to shoot.
It's tons of fun. Proof positive that this style of game doesn't work solely because it's connected to a popular franchise. The action is snappy and entertaining without a single dino in sight.
I'd be more than willing to sit down for a full run of this whole game, but we've got more titles to try out. Like this, Guitar Hero.
Well, this game looks pretty similar to the experience many of us played at home years ago. Anything make this arcade version stick out from the other releases of Guitar Hero?
The controller. They've done away with the whammy bar, and the weight of it, way heavier. With stronger modifications meant to survive the brutality of legions of arcade goers, this feels more like a real guitar than what was bundled in the console version.
Okay, but it's still the same overall play experience, right?
Yeah, pretty much. The game plays just like it did at home. I'd be way more positive about this whole experience, but the buttons on the controller are not the most responsive here. It feels like I really need to jam them hard to make my inputs register. That can put a stop to a point streak mighty quick.
Yeah, not great. With this hardware feeling so different from what we had at home, is there a different company producing this version of Guitar Hero?
Yup, and it's a name you'll see around places like this a lot. Raw Thrills. If you take one lap around a modern arcade, you'll spot their logo practically everywhere.
Raw Thrills, Raw Thrills, Raw Thrills! Who the heck are they?
I had to do a little research, but I found out that Raw Thrills was founded in 2001 by this guy right here.
Who, that delivery guy?
Yup, that delivery person is Eugene Jarvis. Before founding Raw Thrills, he had an illustrious career with legacy video game companies like Williams. He created Defender, Smash TV, and the Cruis'n series.
So this is why Cruis'n Blast does such a good job of capturing the magic of those earlier Cruis'n titles.
They are a massive producer of modern machines you'll find out in the wild. It's nice to see companies like them still out there, keeping arcades alive with new experiences.
They seem to be providing machines that appease old-school video arcade lovers as well as folks that prefer ticket redemption machines. They often combine both worlds, like the Frenzy games we got a kick out of. Sure, you finish playing and you get rewarded tickets, but the gameplay alone was more than worth the price of admission.
We played a whole bunch of Raw Thrills titles we enjoyed throughout this trip, but not every machine left us feeling so positive. There were plenty of titles that didn't exactly stick the landing with either of us.
But to deny what the company is accomplishing today would be a shame. They're one of the major forces finding new ways to make the arcade scene relevant in an era where we can easily play great-looking and great-feeling video games at home.
Their cabinets tend to be the biggest and the brightest, geared towards giving players thrills they can only experience right here in the arcade.
To wrap up our time at the Great Canadian Midway, we proceeded to play every ticket redemption game we could on the floor.
And let me tell you, there is no shortage of games to play, a whole variety, every theme and concept imaginable.
We've been singing the praises of the Great Canadian Midway's huge collection of titles, but we've got a sneaking suspicion that there's something visitors are pulled to here besides the games.
Yeah, and that something is this, the redemption counter.
There's no redemption counter on the Canadian or American side of the Falls, with a prize selection larger than this one.
Unfortunately, despite how many games we played, our ticket redemption hot streak went kind of cold.
By the end of all this, we combined our tickets to buy the classiest prizes we could. Fashionable.
Stylish.
Irish?
Yeah, we have no idea why these were here as a prize, but hey, they're ours now.
With just a handful of tokens left and the day getting a bit late, we spotted one final machine to plunk our coins into.
Another Dance Dance Revolution style game? This one by a completely different manufacturer with a tweaked dance platform layout?
It's probably the newest rhythm-based dance game we've seen so far.
Personally, I'm looking to get off my feet right about now. How about you, Adam?
And that was the Great Canadian Midway, a fantastically large arcade with tons of games.
My mind is blown. Yeah, we've got so many new modern games. A reasonably good mix of ticket redemption machines and sort of your more classic style arcade games, your driving games, your classics reborn, can we say? The beauty of this is that with these modernized games is that there's less upkeep, which is nice. So we didn't really see much that was out of order.
Yeah.
Which is nice to see.
Yeah, because
finally,
after going to some of these other places, you can see like those machines are just so old. Where do you find the parts for them? And this place is running basically all new hardware, so you really don't have to worry about it that much.
Right.
Folks, this is the end of the journey. That was the last arcade.
Oh my gosh.
But before we talk about which arcade we think is the best, let's go to a little recap.
All right.
You joined us as we ventured far and wide across 2 entire cities to explore and experience every arcade and game that was on offer.
And while it took far more time than either of us expected, we cannot deny we had a blast.
The variety of game machines you'll find here is pretty wild, ranging from old to new, with something for just about any kind of gamer.
Whether you're a seasoned veteran or a newcomer, there's plenty to play and experience.
But now we gotta answer the question. Adam, what was your favorite arcade?
You know what? Skylon Tower's hidden collection of classics caught me totally off guard. There were lots of great arcade spaces by the falls, with plenty of modern games I loved. But the magic those folks at Skylon do in keeping those ancient wonders operational is beyond admirable. Not only is it my favorite arcade here, but it's a place I'll be coming back to real soon to re-experience its amazing lineup. How about you, Shane? What was your pick for your favorite arcade?
While I agree Skylon was really impressive, I've gotta go with the Great Canadian Midway. It's the perfect mix for me. I like the wide selection on offer and the commitment to keeping the games in a pretty good state. Plus, seeing a several-decade-old pinball table in perfect working order in a place that has that much foot traffic, it's a good sign. You can't beat that massive selection to go through. It's a must visit if you're gonna pick one arcade alone.
So your favorite game is clearly something at that location, right?
Actually, no. Despite how much I like this place, the ultimate game for me was back at Skylon. Seeing a real working Galaxy Force completely blew me away. Followed close second by Operation Ghost back all the way at the start in Adventure City. But how about you? What was your top pick?
There was so much good, but if I have to choose just one, it's gotta be Sega's Rambo cabinet. From the explosive battlefield action to the movie callback segments, the film clips, and the dumb fun of Rambo rage and vulnerability. It was such an incredible discovery. We definitely have to hunt down the Rambo rap for the drive home.
Absolutely. It looks like we both picked games that really are best experienced in arcades. And in a way, I think we've proven arcade establishments still have their place in the realm of gaming. They offer play experiences you can't easily replicate at home. No matter which arcade you go to, you can probably find something fun and unique to play.
Yeah, and the really cool thing about Niagara Falls is you don't need to choose just one arcade to visit out here.
Many of the locations we've seen are within walking distance of one another. You can play Galaxy Force 2 and Skylon 1 minute and slide into Space Invaders Frenzy with just a short walk down to Clifton Hill. You can also walk to any of the arcades we saw in the US as well. They're all super close to one another. The Tourist Trap territory contains so much good gameage that it's worth visiting just as a video game fan alone.
And that's what we picked for the best arcade and the best arcade game that we played in Niagara Falls.
Look, folks, it's been a long, harrowing journey filled with tears and blood and then tickets. I don't know where the blood comes from, but whatever.
My hands after playing all the ticket redemption game.
So it's awesome. You know, I never win anything. I feel like we left with a mountain of tickets. Both you and I won a bunch of tickets and stuff.
1,000.
Yeah, right.
That's crazy.
Niagara Falls, what can we say about it?
If you're into video games, if you're into arcades, if you're into just having fun, gotta come to Niagara Falls.